Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Eileen, and this is Medicine Walk. And for those of you who are listening in on Blog Talk Radio, this is Healing House Radio. So I hope you've had a good week, and as we finish our discussion this month of light and shadow, I really want to just kind of reinforce that we're not talking about good and evil. That's kind of a different thing. Light and shadow are both absolutely normal and appropriate aspects of each one of our personalities. There's always that aspect of, what is it that I want to choose? And that can depend on each and every moment and with each and every situation. And if you have questions or comments, I am in the chat room as we speak on the premiere episode on YouTube. And you can come in and you can join the chat room and ask me any questions you'd like. And after the premiere episode, just leave any questions or comments in the comments section. And for those of you listening in on Healing House Radio, you can also leave comments after those recordings on the Healing House Radio site. But if you'd like, come on over to YouTube and check it out. So, to just kind of sum up the discussion, and it really has been sort of an interesting one for me because it reminds me about how easy it is to have those lines get blurry. And intention is key. We were talking about that last week, that what it is that we put behind the energy of either light or shadow determines whether or not the action or impulse is truly light or shadow. And it's not a clear-cut thing. It is very subjective in a lot of ways. Most people would think, well, whether or not something is light or shadow is very objective and clear-cut. No, it's not. And the more we accept that each and every one of us carry both of those capacities, and that everything carries light and shadow, including light and shadow itself, the more that we can embrace that, the more we can be able to find acceptance and balance, because it's by understanding what those two extremes, or anywhere along that spectrum, what those two mean, really can bring us to that place of balance point and choice. And that's the most important thing, is to understand that this is about choice. It's not, well, I'm just that way, or that person is always that way. Nobody is always anyway. And it might be very easy, or it might seem very easy looking in from the outside. And it is really challenging when we're faced with that within ourselves. What's very clearly one thing within us, somebody else might see it totally different, which is fine, because what we want to do is we want to understand that everyone has their own place on that spectrum, and what they perceive, and how they create the stories, because by understanding how we create our stories, we can understand how somebody else can create theirs. So looking at the aspect of stories, and we've talked about this before, and you can go back to some of the other videos where we talk about the stories we tell ourselves. My Twitter page, the caption on it is, "Tell yourself a better story." The ability to tell yourself a better story is directly related to how well you can manage light and shadow. If you look for shadow, usually that's what you'll find. If you look for light, usually that's what you'll find. And the trick is to be able to accept what is in the center, what is at the balance point, because from there you can see both sides clearly. So consider that, just consider right now the person who really irritates you a lot. It can be any person, and no pointing, no naming names, but just consider that individual, to look at them from both their light and their shadow. I mean, maybe it's somebody who's a really close friend, yet can sometimes do things that drive you crazy, but you've known each other for way too long. So, you kind of let it go, but you don't really. And consider, some of the things that they do that cause an irritation. Now, just because something irritates you, does that make it shadow? No. Does it necessarily make it light? No. It just makes it a natural human reaction to something, and it is how each person perceives their part in that particular event. It may be that that person doesn't, maybe they tell jokes that are a little bit mean-spirited, and nobody's really called them on it, so they just keep doing it. And they may even say, it's like, well, if you don't like it, that's your problem. Yeah, it is a problem. But if you don't tell them it's a problem, then that's got to be on you. So what is our part in what aggravates us about other people? What is it about someone else's shadow that can trigger us into responding from our own? And the interesting part is that often it's the parts of ourselves that we're not really comfortable with or that we're frustrated by. Those are usually the things that frustrate us in other people. Somebody who, say, procrastinates is really irritated by the fact that somebody else kind of, lets something that they need sort of go to the wayside. So take a look at what it is that irritates you most about other people. Then think about the times that you yourself have done that. And is it something that strikes a little too close to home? Because as we talked about in one of the earlier videos when we were talking about shadow, shadow is drawn to shadow. The whole idea behind shadow is that the reason it affects us, it's not attaching to our light. It's, not stimulating that end of the spectrum. What it's doing is it resonates with and starts stimulating the shadow within us. Responding to anger with anger. One person is scared and suddenly another person is panicking. Whatever it is, and see, that's where the mob mentality can come in, like almost a hive mind. What is happening in that case isn't so much about what people are consciously thinking, it's about a sudden resonance. It's like one person's shadow triggers another one, and then suddenly they're both vibrating, and then that shadow energy starts resonating with the shadow energy of other people. So what you can do is you can actually have something start off at a core and start spreading out. One person can exponentially just start affecting multiple people, and those people affect other people and other people and other people, until you've got a whole bunch of folks who are all in a very unpleasant place. Now, it is true that the same thing can work for light. One person who is smiling and inspired and just radiates that wonderful energy that most of us love to be around, and suddenly somebody else is feeling good. Suddenly somebody else is feeling good. My favorite example of this was I was at a mall on Christmas Eve, and I'm sorry, I like going out and going to places like malls and stores on Christmas Eve. One, because we all know we waited till the last minute to shop, so we may as well relax with it. And I like to look at the lights. There's something about, the lights and things like that on Christmas Eve, that feels really magical to me. And, however you feel about Christmas, that's awesome for you, or how you word it, or happy holidays, or whatever. That season, that night of, what can be tremendously frustrating, because you're out, you're in the mall, and maybe you forgot to get batteries, or that one person who it turns out you're going to meet up with the next day and you forgot to get them, you didn't know you were going to see them, so you didn't get them a present, and all of that stuff, for whatever reason that they're out there. Anyway, I was out there, and I like to wear, funny Christmas hats, and so I'm standing in a line, and the computers are acting up, and people are just really kind of cranky and rah, 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 and it's kind of building up. So I'm sitting there and I start singing a Christmas carol. I think it was, oh God, what was it? I think it was like, um, God, I can't remember now. This was years ago. Anyway, it was a Christmas carol, and I started singing it, and the person next to me looks at me and starts singing with me. Well, then somebody else starts singing with them, and so suddenly there's a whole group of us sitting there laughing, singing, just crazy. Some people are on key, some people are off key, and we just enjoyed it. It was funny. And so suddenly that escalating tension just kind of faded away. And so, it was a situation that got turned around. And was it just because of me and, oh, I have this special energy? No. It was just because I realized, okay, this energy is going into a place that it doesn't need to go. So instead of having it trigger my shadow, I can bring out my light, and I can make light of it, and encourage. If I can encourage like one or two people, I know that suddenly they're going to become a part of the wave, and that wave can get bigger. So when you're in situations where there's kind of a collective consciousness of a particular emotion, it's very easy to get sucked into it. Especially now, it's a lot easier to get sucked into more shadow because that's primal. Shadow energy is much more primal, fight or flight, or fight, flight, or freeze. And it can be more reactive. It can be more, it's like alpha type of superiority type of conflict. So the idea that what you find in a particular energetic space can be worked with, because all you have to do is realize, okay, where on the light to shadow spectrum is this, and where would I like it to go? And if you would like it to go, I mean, you can't just immediately get everybody to, start smiling and laughing. You have to work with it subtly. Just slowly bring something in and slowly shift by increments, just, nudging it over into the direction that you'd like it in. And I find that people who are able to do that, who can do it subtly, can really be an amazing comfort and balancing energy when a situation is going into a bad direction, when there's a lot of people and it's getting aggravating. So make sure that, one, subtle. And for those of you who are empathic, go back and look at the videos we have on empathy, and realize that you can transmit. I believe that everybody is, to a certain level, empathic, which means that you feel the emotions of others as if it's your own feeling. The other side of that is the ability to transmit an emotion into someone else that they feel as if it's their own feeling. And, like I said, go back and watch the videos on that. And the ability to do that definitely enhances your ability to shift where on the spectrum of light to shadow that what's happening falls. And this can be done on a one-to-one basis. This can be done in groups. But ultimately, in order to do that, you have to be really, really clear on your own light and shadow. And sometimes that can be really tough, because sometimes it means taking a look at yourself in a way that maybe isn't so comfortable. It may mean, really connecting with that idea that, you know what, I am more aggravated by this situation than I want to admit to. And I find that spiritual people have the hardest time with that. People who it's like, oh no, I'm on a spiritual path, and oh, this is, it's nothing but love and light. No. I mean, if that's the way you hold it, then, I honor that for you. I find that that's not a very realistic way to go about it, because it goes against human nature. It's better to say, in this moment, I accept that I am feeling this particular feeling. And that feeling is perfectly appropriate. It's perfectly normal in a situation where I have been hurt, or I feel attacked, or I feel betrayed, or any other triggering situation, anger is a very, very, very reasonable thing to feel. Now, it depends on what you do with that anger. Do you acknowledge, okay, I'm angry, now, where do I want to go with this that would be conscious? What will allow me to get the outcome I want, to feel heard, and to still stay within my integrity? And by just kind of asking yourself and taking a second, it's like, okay, I acknowledge this is what I'm feeling. That's so much better than trying to pretend like something doesn't upset you when it obviously does. Because by saying that, and believe me, everybody can tell when somebody is saying, I'm not mad, and everybody can tell that they're mad. If you think nobody can tell you're mad, you're wrong. Ask your friends. They will tell you the truth. They will let you know, oh yeah, we knew you were mad about that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. It is about being able to take ownership of it and realizing that all it is a state of being in a particular moment. What you do with it is the important thing. What is the intention you put behind it? If somebody hurts you by accident, do you hurt them on purpose? Because that means that what they did was not shadow, but what you did is. So being able to take a look at that, be honest with yourself, know yourself. Shakespeare said, this above all, to thine own self be true, for then it must follow as the night the day, that thou canst not then be false to any man. So, Polonius said that. So the idea that when we are true to ourselves, and we are true to what we know about ourselves and our light and our shadow, then that means that we can interact with other people's light and shadow from a place of conscious thought. That if somebody's throwing shadow at you, you understand it. You go, oh, okay, they're in a place of shadow and they are not in a place of choice. So therefore, I can choose whether or not I want to respond to it, or whether or not I want to just, walk away. If I want to respond to it, if I can stay calm, if I can be in that place of centered grounding, that place of balance, well then, if you can be in that place while other people are kind of losing their minds, then it allows you to always really be able to be in control of your situation. Because they're not. If they're being ruled by their emotions and their primal instincts and fight, flight, or freeze, they are not in a place of choice. But by you being in a place of choice, it allows you to go, you know what, this really isn't worth it. This discussion really isn't worth it. Trying to change this person's opinion really isn't worth it. Or, I don't have to stand here while they try to change mine. And, you can walk away, you can say, you know what, I really don't feel the need to discuss this any further with you. Good luck with that. So, being able to identify where we are. If we know we're being triggered, and if we know our own light and shadow, and we can say, wow, okay, this situation is triggering me big time, then that means as soon as we acknowledge that, it gives us the power and the responsibility to go into our place of choice. So, when you look at light and shadow, there are conscious aspects to that, I believe. I believe that there is a certain level of consciousness to the overall energetic of light and to the overall energetic of shadow. Each one is drawn to and will resonate with its own, equal frequency. So if you feel yourself getting sucked into something, if you're getting triggered, and there are people out there who will trigger you just because they think it's fun. And there's also a lot of people who will try to trigger people because they know it takes them out of choice. It takes them out of that place of being able to, be grounded and centered. And, if they can provoke you into looking or sounding irrational, then, hey, they win. And, there's probably a lot of people who it's like, yeah, I know somebody like that, that they just come in and just, poke at you, and poke at you, and poke at you. And then when they provoke you and you snap, well, then it's like, wow, why are you so angry? Obviously, you're not, ready to have this discussion or whatever. So don't let them, because that is an expression of their shadow. They could be sounding very kind and very nice, but if their intention is to provoke, it's nothing but shadow. It doesn't matter what they're saying. They're coming from shadow. And you walking away from them and saying, you know what, I'm not playing your game. I know what you're doing, and it's not okay. So you go play that game by yourself and turn on your heels and storm out and, leave them standing there. Walk away from the conversation. Tell them you will not talk to them about it because you don't want to and you don't have to, and no, you don't want their opinion. And some people might say, oh, well, that's rude and that's shadow. No, it's not. It's authentic. It's being in your truth. It is not giving somebody else the power to make you feel something that you don't want to feel. And actually, for me, that is my definition of when I've reached a place of forgiveness, is that a person or event no longer are given by me the power to make me feel or inspiring me a feeling that I don't choose to feel. So if somebody does something to me that is either hurtful or makes me mad, I know when I've forgiven them when I can think about that event or I can think about that person and say, you know what, doesn't matter to me. I am not going to go into feeling angry just at the thought of that person or what they did, because it's not worth it. Life's too short. So, it's important to understand, because it's by understanding what it is that would provoke a reaction in me, to take a look at that reaction and go, you know what, is that really where I want to come from? Is that really what serves my ultimate desire to, be understood, or, to not be taken advantage of, or to not be spoken badly of, or whatever it is? Once I have a situation, I can either choose to react to it from a place of light, or I can choose to react to it from a place of shadow. But either way, my goal is to find a balance point, because it's in that balance point that I can choose. It's like, you know what, it really isn't worth it. And then I can move forward without attachment. And it's that ability to detach from the triggering event and the energy it creates, the shadow it stirs up, whether it's fear, anger, envy, and all of those have light sides. So, the light side of fear is wisdom and discernment. The light side of anger is determination and conviction. The light side of envy is the desire to see something that someone is doing and say, you know what, I'm going to do that too. I'm gonna work my butt off, and I'm gonna, that's what I want to achieve. And so I'm going to make sure that happens, and I'm going to do what I need to do it. Because if you're just envying something somebody has, like, oh, I wish I had that, but I don't want to do any of the work for it, it's like, well, then that's kind of empty. But if you see somebody and it inspires you, so, the light side of envy would be inspiration and the desire to make a dream happen. So, taking a look, light and shadow are not, absolutes. They fall in a spectrum, and each situation that you're in, there will always be that idea of one or the other. Which do you choose? And as long as you're coming from that place of choice, well, then light and shadow are simply two things that exist in your universe, two possibilities. And when you have those possibilities, then you have ultimate choice. When you can come from a situation and go, you know what is it that would make me happy? What is it that would serve me? What is it that makes me feel, my best? What keeps me in my place of integrity? What will allow me to walk away from this conversation or this situation, and and it's like, you know what? Pat myself on the back there. I did a good job. So, consider your own light and shadow. Not good and evil, just light and shadow, as both optional choices. The question is, what do you choose in that moment? And the answer is, basically, you will choose the best thing you know to choose with the tools that you have. So the trick is, get some better tools. And we've talked about that, emotional tools and energetic tools and things like that. So go back through some of the old videos, and and also prior to that, the videos that I did, because at the beginning of this year was when I started doing actual teaching ones. But you can go to some of the old videos and look at some of the topics, and you'll probably find that there are others that will touch on this subject and may give you some additional insight. So, go out and just be you. And you are both your light and your shadow. All you have to do is bring them into balance and harmony. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me. And if you found this video useful, then please like it. And you could also share the video. You can subscribe, which is always cool, trying to see how many more people we can build the community with. And if you would like to support the channel on a bigger level, in the description is the link to my Patreon account, which I'm working on, raising money so that, to afford better equipment and editing and all of that other stuff. Because I really want to make this, as good as it possibly can be. So if you want to contact me, you can do so through the Medicine Walk link, the Facebook Medicine Walk page, and you can also contact me on Twitter. So thank you again, and the chat will be closing down now, but if you do have other questions, as I said, please leave them in the comments. I do check those. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for participating in this month's discussion. Next month, we will start a new topic. And as always, I wish you balance, and I wish you blessings from my heart to yours. Love you, and class dismissed.